Hello again, and here's a beginner's guide to using the LightWeight fluids package for Unity. To get started, I have this scene already set up where I have an animation of a mug getting lifted and then falling over. I want to add a fluid system to the scene so that the mug gets filled up with a fluid that then gets spilled out as the mug falls over. I also have this little disc here, which is going to be the source of the fluid that pours in over time and then stops. So to get started, I will add a new game object, and I'll just call this fluid, and I will add a LWF simulator, which will handle the fluid simulation. I'm going to put this at the center, and I mostly want the fluids to flow around here, so I'll move it somewhere around the center of where I think the fluid particles will be. I will also add a renderer and generate a material for it. This will then generate here in my assets, which I can just drag in there wherever I want it. And finally, I will add a new game object, which will be my emitter. And I will add an LWF source. And there we go. Which needs a reference to the simulator. And I will put both of these in my animation hierarchy. And I'll add the emitter to this. Or rather, I'll just add the emitter script directly to this game object I already have. There we go. And assign this, and there you go. So I want this fluid to pour out a little bit slowly, so it just kind of drops into the mug. So I'll give this a speed of 3, just to see what happens. I will give them a lifetime of 10. I'll just leave this randomization at 0. And this radius I will control via the animation so that it turns on and off again. So in the animation, I will record, and I'll set the fluid to pour at the maximum here, which is, let's try 0.5, and it will be at 0 here. And then I'll stop around there, and it will also be at the maximum here. So if I look at the curve, it just goes up and down again. Okay. Now I can take a look at what that will look like in Unity. Alright, so I see several problems. So the first of which is that the fluid just seems to pass right through the table and fall off into the void. So the first thing I need to set up is the fluids. Make sure that the collision mask is, in this case, set to default, which will make sure that the fluid collides with all of this geometry, which is already working a bit better. This is also pretty laggy right now, so I'm just going to reduce the number of particles. This can remain the same. And I will also change the color a bit because I want something that looks a little bit like beer, so something slightly transparent. And then I can also make this a bit sharper. You can just experiment with all of these values to see what works. This metallicity can be on 0 and smoothness can be pretty low. Alright, so a few more things. I can reduce the pressure seems okay. The lifetime can be a bit longer. can introduce a little bit of drag to help with the stability, or just put this to desynced instead of half, which should also help a lot. Add a bit more stickiness since the fluid seems to be flowing away. I'll make this a little bit bigger so it's a bit more smooth. There are, of course, still a lot of parameters here that you can play around with as you please. Generally, I recommend trying to double and halve these numbers to see how they change your scene and to see what works and what doesn't. So, for example, I can up this pressure so that this fluid takes up more volume. I can lower it so that it can more easily collapse to the bottom. Can turn off the viscosity to have it like jiggle around a bit more so that it takes a bit longer to settle down. Of course, do the opposite so that it just immediately stops. The tension just controls how much the fluid likes to bunch together, so this is generally a much higher number than the others. The gravity, I can of course increase it or decrease it, turn it off completely, reverse it if I need to for some reason. Increase the mass of the particles, which generally influences how they collide with physics objects. Can introduce drag, which helps a lot for stability, or just slows it down a whole lot if I want to. An acceleration limits, which can help if you're having a bit more an unstable system. You can just make sure that it doesn't explode spontaneously. And finally, also the collision parameters. You can, for example, make it avoid nearby walls a bit more strongly by increasing the radius, and give it some bounciness so that it bounces around, obviously, or some stickiness so that it likes to stick to surfaces that it collides with. You can also make this value very high. This kind of immediately gets stuck and doesn't want to move. For example, without this mug, it just forms a blob on the table right now. So this is what the finished mug scene will look like when all the parameters have been tweaked to get optimal effects. In this case, I've managed to work away the fluid clipping through the glass, and you get this nice and smooth looking fluid animation. So this example scene, along with a few others, is included in the package, along with lots of documentation that should help you get started with more advanced applications. With that, I hope you are ready to make some beautiful games and other applications with this package. So I wish you a lot of good luck and goodbye.